Namaskar, this is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. No prizes for guessing the top story tonight. It's the Maldives and the misplaced priorities of their government. Muizu's misadventure may cost his country. India says the onus to repair the relationship is now on him. But does he even want to repair? And what does this mean for Mali? We'll discuss all of that tonight. The Maldivian president is in Beijing as we speak, and the Chinese have been exposed by an American intelligence report. Turns out their missiles have water instead of fuel, and they can't be launched in some cases, all thanks to corruption in the forces. We'll explain. In Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina has a record 5th term in office. She's laid down her priorities. We'll bring you the full story. Also, why Apple has lost $177 billion in a week. Why Boeing is in trouble. A plane's side panel blew out just after takeoff. You have to see it to believe it. Why the US thinks that Israel could lose the war. Why private security companies are booming in South Africa. Where is the police? Why the Pentagon chief kept his hospitalization a secret. And why the British Navy advertised on LinkedIn for a top job. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Big relief for Nawaz Sharif ahead of elections in Pakistan. The Supreme Court overturns a lifelong disqualification of lawmakers. The court says parliamentarians can be barred from holding office only for 5 years. Sharif, who was disqualified in 2017, can now contest in the polls next month. China accuses the UK of spying on them. Beijing detains a foreign consultant, claims he was spying for Britain's intelligence service MI6. Recently, London had also accused Beijing of spying on its MPs. Somaliland's defense minister quits over the port deal with Ethiopia. The minister says the prime minister of the self-declared republic took a unilateral decision. The port is located in the breakaway Somali region, and angry Somalia has recalled its ambassador from Ethiopia. German farmers block roads in and around the capital, Berlin. Major highways also blocked with tractors. The farmers are angry over subsidy cuts. Commuters are facing major travel disruptions. The protests are likely to last all week. The Indian Supreme Court quashes the early release of the convicts in the Bilkis Bano case, ordering them to report back to jail within 2 weeks. In 2022, the Gujarat High Court had released the 11 men. They were sentenced to life imprisonment for raping Bilkis Bano and killing her family during the 2002 riots. Pope Francis calls for a global ban on surrogacy. The 87-year-old head of the Catholic Church says it is deplorable. In 2022, the Pope had condemned surrogacy as an inhuman practice. Commercial surrogacy is banned in most countries but allowed in some American states. And Oppenheimer and Succession sweep the Golden Globe Awards. Oppenheimer wins 5 awards, including Best Actor and Best Director. Barbie bags the Golden Globes' first ever box office award. Do you know what Indians are searching for today? Lakshadweep. How to travel there, the main attractions, the holiday packages, all of it. Lakshadweep is the top search item. Last week, Prime Minister Modi went there. He wanted to make Lakshadweep popular, and now it is, but with a twist. It is trending because of the Maldives, specifically 3 Maldivian ministers. They insulted the Indian Prime Minister, called him names, used words like clown, terrorist and puppet of Israel. All 3 ministers have been suspended. The Maldivian government was quick to act, trying to distance itself from their statements. But it's struggling to manage the fallout. Mohammad Muizu is the president of the Maldives. He's under fire from the opposition. They want strong action from him. The suspension of the ministers is not enough, they say. Here in India, a boycott campaign is on. A campaign against the Maldives. It's a tourist destination, but now Indians are cancelling their vacation plans. Travel agents are no longer taking bookings. It's a full-blown diplomatic crisis for Mali, and it comes at the worst possible time. Their president, Mohammad Muizu, is in China on a much-publicized 5-day visit. This controversy has completely overshadowed his trip. While Muizu was being welcomed in Beijing today, his top diplomat in New Delhi was being pulled up. India has lodged a formal protest against the three Maldivian ministers, Malsha Sharif, Mariam Shiuna and Abdullah Mazoom Majid. All three are deputy ministers in the youth ministry. They insulted not just the Prime Minister of India, but also the country. They insulted India. Consider what Mariam Shiuna said. She compared India with cow dung. After the backlash, they deleted their posts. Then the Maldivian Foreign Ministry tried to repair the situation. It released a statement. It said the ministers spoke in their personal capacity and their posts do not reflect the government's position. Male has also called the Indian High Commissioner in the country. He was told the same thing. The posts do not reflect Male's official position. But it won't cut it. The opposition in the Maldives is up in arms. Leaders like Mohammad Nasheed, the former Maldivian president, he called the language used by these ministers, and I'm quoting, appalling. Muizu's predecessor, Ibrahim Soli, also spoke about this. He was president before Muizu took over last year. And he said that the posts, and I'm quoting, the posts were hateful. The main opposition party in Male is the MDP, the Maldivian Democratic Party. It has issued a statement and called for strict action against the ministers. I have a quote from that statement. The actions by senior government officials yesterday were not isolated incidents, but the result of a hate-mongering campaign. This is a hate campaign. This is what the Maldivian opposition says. And now let's look at the reactions here in India. Social media is full of angry posts. Many Indian celebrities have spoken, like film stars Akshay Kumar and Salman Khan. Also cricketers Sachin Tendulkar and Hardik Pandya. They have condemned the comments of the Maldivian ministers. Some have even called for a boycott of the Maldives. Several hashtags are trending in India, like Maldives out, boycott Maldives, explore Indian islands. There are thousands of posts online. People are sharing their cancelled tickets, calling on others to not travel to the island nation and to visit Indian destinations instead. All of this will hurt the Maldives. They get their biggest tourist inflow from India. In 2023, over 200,000 Indians visited to the Maldives, and tourism is the largest industry for this country. It accounts for 28% of their GDP and over 60% of their foreign exchange transactions. So the boycott calls will hurt Male. Their economy needs Indian tourists. And the actions of their ministers are indefensible. That's what New Delhi conveyed to Male. The Maldivian High Commissioner was summoned today. He was called to the Ministry of External Affairs, which is India's foreign ministry, and the meeting was brief. Reports say it lasted barely 4 minutes, a 4-minute-long meeting. Indian officials expressed strong displeasure. The High Commissioner was told that the Maldives has damaged the bilateral relationship and it is up to President Muizu to fix it now. India also conveyed that a suspension is not enough. These ministers must be dismissed. Nothing less will suffice. But so far, Male's actions are half-hearted. They have not apologized. Their president has not made a public statement about this, and the ministers are being shielded. Because a suspension is not punishment. It is a strategy to buy time, to keep the ministers out of the limelight until the controversy dies down. They will retain their positions, and their presence in the government is a statement, a reflection of President Muizu's mindset and his attitude towards India. So how did this controversy begin? At first glance, it's clear. After Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Lakshadweep, that's when social media had a meltdown. But that's not the real reason. What's happening now is a symptom. The disease is Maldivian politics, especially the politics of President Mohammad Muizu. Just look at his career. He supported the India Out campaign, he peddled anti-India propaganda, and he turned his supporters against New Delhi. So what else did he expect? It's easy to dismiss these ministers as loose cannons, but they're not. They represent a new kind of Maldivian politics, one where India is the big enemy. So the blame lies with President Muizu as well. He may not have pressed the trigger, but he did everything else, from buying the explosives to marking the target. That's what he did. The question is why? And the answer is quite simple. It's politics. There are two ways to build a campaign. One is a positive spin. You can build a campaign for something. And the second is a negative spin. You can build a campaign against something. Muizu and company chose the second path. They painted India as the meddling big brother. as a threat to Maldivian sovereignty, and it worked. Muizzu defeated Ibrahim Soli to win the presidency last year. So now his rhetoric has become policy. Take a look at all his moves since being elected. In late November, he visited West Asia. It was his first foreign visit as president. It was also a snub to India, because usually Maldivian leaders visit New Delhi first. Their first foreign visit is to New Delhi. But Muizzu decided against it, and today he is in China. Then in December, the Maldives skipped a key security meeting. It's called the Colombo Security Dialogue. All others were present. India, Sri Lanka, Mauritius, they all took part. Only one member skipped this event, and that is the Maldives. Later that month, Muizzu decided to scrap an agreement with India, the Hydrography Agreement. It allowed India to survey Maldivian waters, but Muizzu said no more. He won't renew it after June this year. And finally, the biggest snub, Muizzu has asked Indian soldiers to leave the island. Some 75 Indian troops are present in the Maldives. Their job is to operate Indian aircraft there. Muizzu doesn't like it. He told New Delhi to withdraw them. Now put together, what does all of this tell you? Muizzu clearly does not like India, but the question is, can he afford to do this? Can he afford to antagonize India? Again, let's look at some numbers. The India-Maldives trade is worth $500 million. It was just $173 million in 2014, so there is major improvement. India is the Maldives' third biggest trading partner. In tourism, India ranks number 1. More than 200,000 Indians visited the Maldives last year. That's almost 12% of all the tourists. Another factor is proximity. India is the Maldives' closest neighbor. The mainland is around 600 kilometers north of the Maldives. So New Delhi is also the first responder. Like in 1988, during the coup, India repelled mercenaries who tried to oust the president, 1988. Or in 2004, when the tsunami struck. Or in 2014, during the water crisis, a fire broke out at the Malay Water and Sewage Company. So Maldivians had no drinking water. They sent an SOS to New Delhi, and within 12 hours, Indian planes landed with water. 2 Indian ships arrived later. Put together, India delivered some 2,300 tons of water to the Maldives. So I come back to the same question. Can President Muizzu afford to antagonize India? The short answer is no. And don't get us wrong. If Muizzu wants Indian troops to leave, that's his call. That's a sovereign decision. But spewing anti-India propaganda is not strategy. It is not foreign policy. It exposes your true intentions. And who suffers for it? Not Muizzu in his presidential palace. Only the people of the Maldives will be hurt. Whether it's jobs or investments or tourism, they need India's participation. And Muizzu should realize that. It's one thing to campaign on India out. It's quite another to actually do it. And don't take our word for it. Muizzu can look at 2 of his fellow South Asian politicians, Mahinda Rajapaksa of Sri Lanka and KP Sharma Oli of Nepal. Both men cozied up to China. They also tried to limit their relations with India, and where did it get them? Out of office and out of favor. That's where they are. So President Muizzu needs to realize that. And to all our viewers in the Maldives, let me say this. I know the social media outrage has been scary, especially the boycott calls. But I could say that none of that is targeted at you. It's a message to the leadership of your country. Only the leaders, not the people. Indians and Maldivians have a lot in common, whether it's religion or language or ethnicity. And we are proud of that. These social media storms may not last, but that shared history will. It's something the leaders of the Maldives should remember. Staying with the neighborhood, election results are out in Bangladesh and no surprises there. Sheikh Hasina has won again. It will be her 5th term as Prime Minister. There was some drama though. On Friday, a train was set on fire in Dhaka. Around 5 people were killed. The police suspect it was the opposition parties. 7 of their leaders have been arrested. But on polling day, things were better. No violence, no attacks, and no turnout either. Bangladesh's election commission says the turnout was 40%, 40, but reports say it's inflated. Their initial assessment was 28% turnout, but within hours it jumped to 40%. So naturally, people are confused. Then you had a cyber attack. The Election Commission had designed a special app for voters. You could track real-time updates on that app. But on polling day, the app was running slow. Dhaka says it was a cyber attack, that hackers from Germany and Ukraine were behind it. In the end, none of it mattered though, because Sheikh Hasina marched to yet another victory as expected. Her party has won 223 out of 300 seats. Of course, the main opposition did not contest. So at second place are independents, some 63 of them. These are candidates who ran without a political party's backing. It could create a tricky situation. Like, who do you appoint as leader of the opposition? I guess no one knows. But the Prime Minister doesn't seem bothered. She's already talking about her next plans to make Bangladesh a smart economy. Listen to this.
We want to train our younger generation for future, because in 2041 it is our target. So we want to develop the country as well as our younger generation. We want to give them proper training so that they can continue. And as I mentioned you, that this is like smart population, smart government, smart economy and a smart society. That is our target. That is our main aim.
It's been a busy day for her. Diplomats have been lining up to meet and congratulate Sheikh Hasina. Among them was Pranay Kumar Verma. He's India's High Commissioner in Dhaka. Envoys from China and Russia also met the Prime Minister today. What about the US? No reaction yet from Washington, but the American poll observer was satisfied. He said the election was free and fair. And it's been a huge issue between Dhaka and Washington. The US wanted Sheikh Hasina to make concessions. The Prime Minister said no. She compared the opposition to terrorists. But after the results, she did offer a reset. Sheikh Hasina says she wants good relations with Washington. The rest is up to the White House.
From our part, there is no problem. We have a good relationship. Now it depends on you or your government. And I really appreciate that you mentioned our election was really very good. Would you say that it is better than your election? It doesn't matter whether it's a big country or a small country, but sovereign country is sovereign. So every country should have their sovereignty to run their country, to work for people. That liberty should be there.
So what's the big picture here? How does this election change Bangladesh? For starters, Sheikh Hasina has tightened her grip on power. She will be Prime Minister until 2029, and by then her tenure will be 25 years long, a quarter of a century. She will also preside over a changing Bangladesh. In 2026, the country will enter a new phase. It won't be a least developed country anymore. Bangladesh will be a developing country. Having said that, challenges remain. And we can think of three major ones. First is the economy. Inflation was more than 9.7% in 2023. Factory workers went on strike demanding more wages. That has to be fixed. The second challenge is legitimacy. The elections may have been fair, but then again, who do you rig against? If there is no opposition, what's the point of unfair practices? So questions will be asked. And finally, challenge number 3, succession plans. The Prime Minister is 76 years old. By the end of this term, she will be 81. Yet there is no clear succession plan in Bangladesh. No one knows who is number 2. So Sheikh Hasina won't have time to enjoy this victory because she's got a plate full. From foreign relations to economy to domestic political troubles. India too will be watching things closely. Sheikh Hasina has been a valuable ally in Dhaka. It's a relationship forged in history, something that their Prime Minister talked about today.
India is a great friend of Bangladesh. 1971, they supported us, and also 75, they gave shelter to us, me and my sister and myself, and also other family members. So India, we consider our next door neighbor, and we have many problems, but we solve it through bilaterally. So I really appreciate that with neighbor we have wonderful relationship.
India knows what to expect from Sheikh Hasina. She's a known entity, but the instability will worry India. I guess it's a question of how quickly Sheikh Hasina can turn the economy around, because that's always been her USP, a strong economy. She's got 5 years to repeat that miracle. For our next story, allow me to paint a picture for you. Imagine a massive expanse of land. There are hundreds of missile silos and there's a dictator, dressed up in military fatigues, ordering his troops to launch a missile. You wait with bated breath, but nothing happens. Anticlimax. The silo lids which house the destructive missiles refuse to open. Our dictator is frustrated, but undeterred. He orders his soldiers to fire a different missile. Again, they fail. This time, the missiles are the problem. Instead of rocket fuel, they're filled with water. Sounds like a comedy of errors, but what if I told you that this is not fiction? All of this is happening in real life to none other than Xi Jinping, the leader of one of the most powerful nations in the world, with one of the largest military forces. Xi Jinping cannot trust his missiles. Says who? A US intelligence report. They've conducted an assessment and the findings are both hilarious and shocking. Recently, Xi Jinping ordered a purge. His target was the Chinese military. It started with the top guy, Li Shangfu. We've told you about this. He was China's defense minister. Xi Jinping had appointed him in March 2023. Barely 6 months into the job, Li Shangfu disappeared. He went missing in August 2023. 2 months later, in the month of October, he was sacked. Removed from office, the news came officially from Beijing, but as always, no reason was given for his removal. He just disappeared. And this was just the beginning of more high-profile exits in China. Just last month, 9 military officials were given the boot. They were removed from the National People's Congress. That is China's top legislative body. 9 people were removed. In July 2023, 2 top generals were removed. They ran China's nuclear rocket force. And this has been the trend. The Chinese president has been relentless. It's not clear how many officers are gone, but multiple reports say it was a large-scale purge. And Xi Jinping is not done yet. Apparently, the sackings will continue this year as well. The Chinese military mouthpiece, one of the mouthpieces, published a report about this purge, about why Xi Jinping was sacking his generals. And this is what the piece says, and I'm quoting, "China is waging a difficult and protracted war against corruption." So the officers were deemed corrupt. Nothing new there. When Xi Jinping became president, his top priority was fighting graft, especially in the PLA. He launched a campaign called Tigers and Flies, meaning a crackdown on both big and small players, tigers and flies. They will all face action. And that's exactly what he did. In the last 10 years, more than 2 million government officials have been prosecuted in China, including from the PLA. And now, more than 11 years into the job, the cleanup drive is still on. So the Americans dug into this decade-long purge. And what they uncovered was quite embarrassing for China. Turns out, corruption in the PLA is rampant, especially in the defense industrial base. Both the PLA's officials and suppliers are involved, and this corruption has hurt their preparedness, their readiness for war. The US intelligence uncovered specific examples. Listen to this, and I'm not making this up. Listen carefully. China got missiles that were filled with water instead of fuel. I'll repeat that. The missiles supplied to the Chinese army had water, not fuel in them. In Western China, there's a missile silo field where the lids are malfunctioning, so they cannot launch a missile when they want to. I'm sure it's a matter of shame and worry for Xi Jinping. So he's doing what he does best, crack down. But the bigger story here is this: the obvious weakness of his military. China is not war ready. That's the conclusion of the American report. They cannot fight a war. These revelations have shaken China's confidence in its army and raised doubts about the PLA's capabilities. Where does this leave Xi Jinping? He cannot fight the world with missiles filled with water. He pumped billions to modernize his military. He wanted a mighty sword of steel. What he's got is papier-mâché. If the new year is not going so well for you, spare a thought for Apple. It's been just a week and the company has seen everything it seems. Stocks have plunged, demand has plunged, and things just keep getting worse. Since 2022, Apple has been the world's most valuable company, but that title is now under threat. Why? Multiple reasons. Apple's new year started with 2 rating downgrades. That caused shares to drop. Then came a report. It said that the US could move an antitrust case against Apple. And the shares fell further. Apparently, Apple has lost $177 billion in market value so far. $177 billion wiped out in a week. And if this continues, Microsoft could soon overtake Apple as the world's most valuable company. So what explains Apple's rout? Is it the lagging iPhone sales or the looming patent dispute? Our next report tells you.
Have you heard of the Magnificent Seven? They are stocks of America's top tech companies: Apple, Alphabet, Microsoft, Amazon, Meta Platforms, Tesla, and Nvidia. In 2023, they drove the US stock market. At the start of this year, the group was valued at $11.7 trillion, worth more than the combined value of UK, Japan, and Canada stock markets. But one of the Magnificent Seven has taken a hit, and it sent the market cap tumbling. I'm talking about Apple, the world's most valuable company. It was the first to become a $1 trillion company and the first to become a $3 trillion company. But now Apple may lose its top spot to Microsoft. So what explains Apple's bad rout? It started with Barclays. On January 3rd, it downgraded the stock. That caused the shares to slide by almost 4%. Barclays says it has two reasons for this. One, the sluggish demand for iPhones, and two, it says that the iPhone 16 is likely to be lackluster. There will be no new features that will make it appealing. This was the first hit, and then came another downgrade. It was from Piper Sandler. It caused shares to slide again. Then came the final blow, a report saying that the US could file an antitrust case against Apple. According to reports, the Justice Department is in its last stages of investigation. What are they looking at? It's Apple's competitive practices on how it makes it harder for its rivals to compete. Several Apple services are under the scanner, like the iMessage and the payment system. Reports also suggest investigators are looking at the Apple Watch. The Apple market cap has fallen to $2.8 trillion. $177 billion have been erased so far. Microsoft's market cap at present is at $2.73 trillion. The gap isn't much, and Microsoft can easily overtake Apple. So will things only get worse for Tim Cook and company? In 2023, Apple saw sluggish demand. Every quarter has seen a decline in sales, and a reason for that was slowing demand in China. But it's not just Beijing that's ditching Apple. Americans too aren't buying. The smartphone market is plateauing, and for Apple, that's a big problem. After all, its biggest product is the iPhone, and even though it's the top-selling device, the demand isn't as high as expected. Services like Apple Music and Apple Pay are growing, but they're just not making as much money. Then there's artificial intelligence. Microsoft is clearly winning that race. It's moving from computing and focusing on AI. That's given it a new edge. Apple, on the other hand, missed the AI train. It's tried to play catch-up. There's the Vision Pro virtual reality headset, which will release this year. There are also talks about introducing generative AI software, but nothing concrete has happened so far. So Apple has a tough year ahead. It hasn't entered the AI space, its iPhones aren't making as much noise, and it's under investigation. The company was once saved from bankruptcy through sheer innovation. The lack of it could bring about its downfall once again.
What is your worst fear about flying? I'm sure everyone has a list of things that could go wrong mid-air. And chances are, this is on that list. Take a look. That was a Boeing 737 MAX 9 plane. On Friday, it was flying from Portland to Ontario. Shortly after takeoff, the unthinkable happened. The plane's side panel blew out. Can you imagine that? You're climbing at 16,000 feet. You're thinking about which movie to watch next. And suddenly, there's a hole in the plane. You can feel and hear the wind. As it turned out, the problem was with the emergency door. It blew out minutes after takeoff. So the pilots turned around. They landed safely back in Portland. And casualties? Surprisingly, none. Not even a single passenger or crew was injured. Experts say it was pure luck. A, the plane was not too high, so the difference in air pressure was not too much. If it was, passengers could have been sucked out. And B, everyone was wearing a seat belt. They were strapped into place. And C, the seat near the emergency door was empty. So what I'm trying to say is this: the accident could have been a lot worse. In the past, similar accidents have led to the death of passengers, which is why regulators are worried. The US Aviation Authority has decided to ground all Boeing 737 MAX 9 planes. That's 171 aircraft grounded. Same story outside the US. Carriers in Panama, Brazil and Turkey have grounded their plane. What about India? Well, Indian carriers do not use the 737 MAX 9. They use a different model, the MAX 8. That's what we use in India. Despite that, checks were ordered. Airlines were asked to inspect the emergency doors on their 737 MAX 8. No issues were detected. Which brings us to the most important question: how does an emergency door fall off? The answer may lie in the door itself. It's been found from the backyard of a school teacher.
I'm excited to announce that we found the door plug. Woo! Thank you, Bob. Bob, I will not give you Bob's last name, but Bob contacted us at witness@ntsb.gov with 2 photos of the door plug and said he found it in his backyard, but we're going to go pick that up and make sure that we begin analyzing it.
And how is Boeing reacting? They've expressed regret for the incident. They've also promised to help in the investigation. But the market is spooked. Boeing shares crashed 8% after this plane was grounded. So what happens next? A thorough investigation, of course. Possibly some modifications or upgrades. Only then will the aircraft be allowed to fly again. Some 600 flights have been cancelled so far. Thousands of passengers have been affected, and chances are there will be more cancellations this week. Now, Boeing will be hoping that this was a one-off, maybe a freak incident. Because if it wasn't, the company could be in trouble. Structural changes can take years to implement, and even then, you must regain customer trust, which is a bigger challenge. So everything hinges on this probe. Worst case, all 737 MAXs could be grounded by the FAA, the American regulators. If that happens, India too will be affected. But problem or not, Boeing will face questions because the 737 MAX has a turbulent past. It was launched back in 2016. It was supposed to be Boeing's big comeback. They had ceded space to rivals like Airbus. So there was a lot riding on the 737 MAX, but soon tragedy hit. In October 2018, a Lion Air 737 MAX crashed in Indonesia. All 189 people on board died. In March 2019, another 737 MAX crashed. All 157 people on board were killed. So regulators grounded the plane. It was only in late 2020 that the 737 MAX was cleared to fly. Boeing had to make a lot of changes. Here in India, the permission came in 2021. Then slowly, carriers started buying it. Around 218 planes have been delivered so far. Just last year, Air India placed a massive order. It is buying 190 Boeing 737 MAX planes, 190 planes. But this accident could derail all of it. It will bring back memories of 2018 and 2019. It will also raise questions on Boeing's engineering. To Israel now. Their war with Hamas has crossed the 3-month mark, but instead of wrapping up, it seems to be getting worse. Gaza is in ruins, thousands of people have died, and now Israel is bracing for trouble in the north. That's Lebanon. Last week, Israel struck Lebanon, their capital Beirut. Israel attacked. They killed a Hamas leader there in Beirut. Now, Lebanon is the home of Hezbollah, a militant group that has ties with Hamas and Iran. Ever since the war began, Israel has faced shelling from the Hezbollah. It was limited to cross-border exchanges, but now Israel has killed a senior Hezbollah leader too. An Israeli airstrike hit a car in southern Lebanon. It was carrying a man called Wissam al-Tawil, the deputy leader of an elite Hezbollah force. So we come back to the question, will this war escalate? Israel's allies are worried, specifically the US. They're worried. An American intelligence report is out. It says Israel may not win the war against Hezbollah. Here's more.
I'm suggesting to Hezbollah to learn what Hamas already learned in the previous months. No terrorist is immune, and we are determined to defend our citizens and to return the people of the north to their homes safely. This is a national goal that we all share, and we are acting responsibly to contain it. If we can, we will do it in political ways, and if not, we will act in other ways.
It's statements like these which have Israel's allies worried. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said this yesterday, after the Lebanon-based Hezbollah group had fired over 62 rockets at Israel. They claim to have taken out an Israeli observation post, and Israel has been returning fire since. Netanyahu's speech was about projecting strength. He has to, that's his job. But he also seems to be threatening to go to war with Hezbollah, which is not a good idea, at least according to the US. The US Defense Intelligence Agency has conducted an assessment. They found that Israel may have difficulty succeeding if there was an escalation with Hezbollah. It suggests that Israel won't win a two-front war, because after 3 months in Gaza, Israel is stretched thin. It has been bombarding Gaza non-stop. The Israeli Air Force is apparently not fresh enough to tackle Hezbollah. They would face difficulties against Hezbollah air defense systems and their advanced rockets and missiles. It would be a different type of war compared to the flattening of Gaza. The Israeli ground forces would have trouble too. Hezbollah is much stronger than Hamas. It has more fighters. It claims to have over 100,000, but even conservative estimates put them at about 50,000 at least. And they are better trained than Hamas. Some Hezbollah fighters have even seen real combat in neighboring Syria. So an assault on Lebanon definitely won't be the same as storming Gaza. But Israel still seems to be considering it. You have the belligerent statements from Netanyahu and his officials, and on the 1st of January, Israel decided to rest some reservists, letting them recuperate ahead of a new round of fighting. Could that fighting be in the north? Israel's allies are desperately trying to prevent this, both the US and Europe. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in West Asia, again. It's his 4th trip since the war began. He has been flying between Turkey, Jordan, Qatar, the UAE, Saudi Arabia and Israel, trying to get all the big regional players to calm things down.
This is a conflict that could easily metastasize, causing even more insecurity and even more suffering. So from day one, among other priorities, we have been intensely focused on working to prevent the conflict from spreading. And that is indeed a major focus of what is now my 4th visit to the region since October 7th.
Meanwhile, the EU's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, was in Lebanon, also trying his best to avoid an escalation.
I am here when we are seeing a worry intensification of exchange of fire across the blue line in the border between Lebanon and Israel. And I think that the war can be prevented, has to be avoided, and diplomacy can prevail to look for a better solution. And I am sending this message to Israel too. Nobody will win from a regional conflict.
Nobody will win. That was a message for Israel. The West wants to avoid another Iraq scenario, where they have to send in troops for years without having a proper end goal or exit strategy. That's what an Israel-Hezbollah war would end up as, and West Asia may not be able to recover from that.
Now let's turn our attention to South Africa and the security crisis in the country. South Africa's violent crime rates are among the worst in the world. They've been rising over the past decade. And as crime gets worse, 2 things are happening. One, South Africa's police force is dwindling and 2 private security companies are taking their place. The last decade has seen this trend. A 43% increase in private security firms. They've outnumbered the police 4:1. And this trend seems set to rise. Tonight we'll discuss why, but first, let's look at the dire situation that South Africa finds itself in. Do you know what's the murder rate in this country? 75 murders every day. This was in the year ending in February 2023, 75 murders per day. The homicide rate was about 45 per 100,000 people. For perspective, it's about 6.3 per 100,000 in the US. In South Africa, it's 45. So after adjusting for the populations, there are 7 times more murders in South Africa than in the US. 7 times more. It looks much worse when compared to the EU. The murder rate in most European nations is around 1 per 100,000. So a South African citizen is 45 times more likely to get murdered than a European. And this murder rate has been growing over the last decade. There were about 16,200 murders in 2012-13. It shot up to 27,500 in 2022-23. And it's not just murders. South Africa has seen all forms of violent crime grow over the past 10 years. Armed robbery, carjackings, physical and sexual assaults. So people increasingly feel unsafe, and a large reason for that is the state of the South African police. The police service had about 140,000 active officers in 2022, 140,000. That's 17,000 less than a decade earlier. And in the same period, the South African population has grown by around 8 million. Add to this the chronic underfunding of the police.
The reason we have so much crime in South Africa is because organized crime can thrive in an environment where there's a disorganized police force. And we don't have a disorganized police force because they've set out to be disorganized or they've been captured. It's simply because they don't have sufficient resources.
So you can see how crime would get out of hand in a situation like this, and why many officers would opt for an alternative career. So they flock to private security companies where they perform many of the same functions as the police does. Some firms patrol neighborhoods. Their armed personnel respond to break-ins or robberies. Reports say that sometimes even the police ask them for assistance. The police ask the private security companies for help. Other security firms have more specialized roles, like finding and recovering stolen vehicles. What you're watching is one such anti-hijacking unit. Private security personnel are well equipped with assault rifles and bulletproof vests. They have scanners that detect stolen vehicles. They chase down the car thieves or hijackers. They conduct a sort of citizen's arrest. And then what happens to the person who's been arrested? He or she is usually dropped off at a police station. And all of this is legal, by the way. South Africa even has regulators for this. A private security industry regulatory authority, that's what they have. It oversees this privatization of law enforcement. And therein lies another problem. Because if it is private, it is for profit. These security firms do not patrol areas out of the goodness of their hearts. They do it because they're paid to do it. And the result is this: rich individuals or neighborhoods are safe, the less well-off are the ones who suffer. The South African government has vowed to fix this. They want to recruit 10,000 police officers this year, but it's a drop in the ocean. A lot more needs to be done, or South Africa will continue to devolve into the wild, wild west. For our last story tonight, let's stay with the topic of defense, but more specifically military. Here is a list of 5 nations: America, Russia, China, India, and Britain. Let me ask you, what's in common? What's common in their militaries? You'll probably say what's common is their strength. These 5 nations have the strongest armed forces in the world. And you'd be right in saying this. But there is one more commonality: a crisis that they share. Not of money or weapons, but of people. The 5 strongest militaries in the world have a recruitment crisis. Take the Bangladesh Armed Forces. Their troop strength has been falling. And now they are at a record low, the lowest in 200 years. So 2 warships will be decommissioned this year from the British Navy. There aren't enough officers to man those ships. Fewer people are joining the forces, more fully trained soldiers are leaving, and some of the top ranks are going vacant, like that of the Royal Navy's Rear Admiral. This is the 6th promotion an officer can reach. It is 2 promotions away from becoming Admiral, the highest rank in the Navy. So being Rear Admiral is a big deal. You're responsible for elite operations, for managing the nation's nuclear deterrent, basically highly classified projects. That's what you do, that require a certain amount of stealth. So one would expect the recruitment to be stealthy too, except it is as blasé as it gets, because the Royal Navy is in troubled waters. It's not been able to hire for the position, so the sailors were forced to cast a wider net, and they've advertised on LinkedIn. The position of Rear Admiral has been advertised on LinkedIn, the professional networking site. And if you think this is weird, then look at the American military. They're facing an unprecedented recruitment crisis too. They have missed the hiring goal by 25%. The military's ranks are going empty, whether in the Army, the Navy, or the Air Force. So America is resorting to TikToks to hire recruits. And then we have the Russians. Compared to the Americans, their methods may sound boring. They're putting up the ads on billboards, urging people to swap the job of a taxi driver or a security guard for that of a so-called warrior. Meanwhile, the Chinese military has an unusual target, not Taiwan, not North Korea, or Winnie the Pooh cartoon. It is targeting green graduates from civilian colleges. In a first, China is looking for fighter pilots there. In another first, women can apply too. And speaking of colleges, India too is taking that route. The Indian military has over 150,000 vacancies, 150,000 vacancies. So the government is holding lectures in schools and colleges, trying to motivate the youth into joining the forces. As I said, there are too many jobs and not enough people to fill them. In some ways, the military have a good problem to solve. At least there are opportunities. Do you know what's worse? When there aren't enough jobs to start with, not just in the forces but across industries, it can go down in 2 ways. In some nations, chaos erupts. Ask these African countries. They have the worst employment rates in the world, and things are turning bloody for them. The lack of jobs in Africa is driving recruitment for armed groups. 25% of terrorist recruits there say they joined because they needed money to survive. That's one scenario. This is what joblessness leads to. The other option is that people escape. Brain drain is an unhappy consequence of lack of jobs, which currently troubles the happy nation of Bhutan. The Bhutanese are considered generally content, except when it comes to job opportunities. The youth unemployment rate stands at 29%, so the young are looking for better opportunities elsewhere, especially in the land down under. 15,000 Bhutanese were issued visas for Australia last year, which is a record, 15,000. That's more than the combined number of 6 preceding years. It's also about 2% of the kingdom's population. So my point is quite simple. If the world's job market were on a map, it would be a complex, paradoxical picture. People have degrees no one cares for, looking at you, liberal arts, but also MBA. It was once a ticket to corporate corridors, but now it seems to be losing that value. Meanwhile, there are mass layoffs for jobs people love. There are mass vacancies for positions people don't want. All of this makes one thing quite clear. The global labor market is a puzzle, and today it faces a mismatch. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In Russia, giant frozen figures of saints, angels, and Jesus Christ mark Orthodox Christmas. In the United States, a winter storm has blanketed the East Coast, leaving roads covered in snow. And in a first, the Indian Air Force carried out a night landing at the Kargil airstrip. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1790, George Washington delivered the first State of the Union address in American history. The speech was given to U.S. congressmen in New York. More than 200 years later, it's one of the key events in the U.S. political calendar. We're leaving you on that note. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
следующим дядюшкой и дедушкой. Христос, конечно, вот это младенчика гордился.